Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a look at the Masters of the Universe Origins Rise of Evil 2-pack. This is a 2-pack that has figures that aren't actually recreations of original toys. They're done up in the original, stylings, but there are two new characters. You have Keldor, known as the Evil Apprentice of Hordak, which, as some of you may know or may be able to surmise by this little accessory right here, is the past version of Skeletor, where basically gets his face melted. And then we have a guy, Origins Kronus. I guess they added the Origins in there because Kronus was too generic to copyright, I suppose. It says evil criminal from another dimension. Now, you may or may not be able to surmise who that character is supposed to become. The blue skin and a helmet's a pretty good giveaway. But yeah, he's supposed to become Trapjaw. So this is him before he got like horribly mangled and had like half his face and his arm and stuff replaced with robotics. So yeah, this is something that didn't appear in the original cartoon, the original toy line. They were plot points that came up kind of after the fact and even into like the 2002 reboot. So it's kind of a retconning to include them in the original, MOTU toy line. But I think it's pretty cool. There's no reason we can't expand on what's already there, right? It's good to have the old stuff, but I don't mind getting new stuff as well. So I think this is really neat. This pack is currently a Target exclusive here in the US. So if you've seen my reviews before, you know this goes. We're going to take a look at the toys and their packaging. Then we'll open it up. We'll see the figures themselves, check out their accessories, all that. Naturally, I'll be doing some group shots and comparisons. Then, of course, at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So the toys come in a, kind of specially sized box for the two of them. It's got the little flap up here with the artwork, and it's Keldor and Kronus looking like they're ready to like charge into battle or something. There's some evil-looking cloud in the background. Is that supposed to be Hordak, maybe? That might be like Hordak's like legacy looming over them or something. I don't know. Creepy cloud. Then you get this interesting little like Emerald Palace looking thing, which I don't recognize. They might be from their home world or their home dimension that they supposedly come from. Who knows? So there's that. You can see there's like a little frog hanging out over here, like frog monster. And then here you can see some of, I guess, what are their future minions, right? You get Beastman, Triclops, Merman, and Evelyn. Looks like, you know what? I think specifically these are supposed to be the prototype versions of these three characters. So kind of makes sense, right? Prototype version of these characters, kind of proto-Skeletor and Trapjaw. I dig it. You get more of it on the back here too, right? So you get Keldor and Kronus fighting King Randor along with Man-at-Arms. So up here the flavor text says, before Skeletor and Trapjaw, Keldor and Kronus terrorize Eternia in their quest for total domination. So that kind of mixes in like the classic MOTU Origins story with the 2002 reboot. Because like the very first episode of that reboot showed like these guys, in their modern day forms, attacking Eternia. And Keldor is supposed to be, at least in most like continuity readings, a half brother of Randor, which is interesting. So like his mom is a being from another dimension, and then I guess his dad is Randor's dad too. So interesting family dynamic. And there's different takes on how he became Skeletor, whether it was like Hordak or his dad or whatever. All right, and then we get a little how-to here. You can pop off the Keldor head and just turn him into straight Skeletor, which is cool because he's a much more fleshed out version of the regular Skeletor toy, right? He's got like the painted crest here. He's got an actual cape like in the show. So you could just use this as a deluxe Skeletor toy. And then it just tells you to twist him into powerful battle positions. Then you get some cross cells, you get Battle Armor He-Man, Ram Man, Clamp Champ, Battle Armor Skeletor, and Panther. So again, as always, I love the packaging, love the level of effort that go into these. And that whole like 80s sci-fi space opera aesthetic just gets me like every time. All right, now we get Keldor and Kronus out of their packaging, along with the extra little Skeletor head here. So Keldor is more or less a blue recolor of the He-Man body type, with some specialized boots here, at least the top part of the boots. They're made to resemble Skeletor's boots with like the point on the front, but they're far less wrinkly looking. And then everything else about him is just, your regular He-Man stuff. Well, I guess minus the hands, right? I believe the hands are the Skeletor hands, specifically like the weapon holding versions. So, yeah, he's definitely a bit of a mixed bag. He's got some old, some new, obviously a new head. The staff and sword are your standard, staff of Havoc and Power Sword, the, single-piece version. And I love how they're done up in this really cool, like, translucent gradient. Makes them look like they're just teeming with Havoc energy, which is really awesome. The chest piece is a regular Skeletor chest piece, just painted up much more than the standard version with a green emblem and a little, like, pink jewel there. And then, of course, the skirt's the same. Now, what's new as far as his attire is this cape, right? The cape's a separate piece, just kind of hangs on his neck. Now, you could, if you want to, migrate that cape over to a regular Skeletor figure, though keep in mind, the blues of his clothing are much darker than regular Skeletor blues, so the cape really won't match. Something to think about. And then Kronus over here, from, like, the pelvic region up, is the He-Man body type. And then down is the regular, like, Trapjaw / Roboto legs, which, have some armor plating on them and stuff. He has a removable piece of clothing. It's like a vest that's meant to resemble the black metal plate that is attached to Trapjaw's torso once he gets the robotic arm. His rifle actually comes from the mold that's seen on the Castle Grayskull playset, because there's like a little laser rifle on there. And then the head is all new, though it does resemble the same helmet that Trapjaw has, complete with the little hoop on the top so he can, like, slide down on a zip line or something. And now this head, I actually had to look this up. I wasn't really sure about it initially. So this is what people in the fandom call the Alfredo Skeletor head. And not because he looks like pasta, but because the design is based off the artwork of one of the old artists that worked on, like, the vintage MOTU stuff, which he had a very kind of fluid yet realistic art design, which is why this head looks a lot more like an actual skull than the standard Skeletor head. And then just for good measure, he has these, like, red jewel-like eyes instead of just painted red eyes. Now this is meant to go on Keldor as a replacement for a standard head. So you can always do that. You just pop the more human-like head off. Put the Alfredo head on. That's tight. One sec. Okay, so did a bit of video editing to cut out the very long time it took me to actually get that head on there. So there is a bit of a problem with this head, at least on my copy. I don't know if it's a universal thing or not, but the socket for the ball joint to go into on the neck is really way too small for that ball to actually fit into. So what ends up happening is it ends up being a very, very tight fit, and it really just doesn't even go down all the way. You can see how it's not fully pushed in because there's just not enough space for it to sit like it's supposed to. So from some angles, it's going to look a little weird, and again, you just be careful because you might end up damaging your toy because that's how hard it is to get on there. Just be aware of that fact. Perhaps if you're a savvy customizer, you might be able to hollow that out a bit more to make it fit better. I will say that overall, it does look really good. It's an awesome looking head, like way scarier looking than the regular Skeletor head. And I do think the darker colors of this toy really help add to that effect. Now, of course, there is a bit of a small issue with this toy. He does lack some of the more demonic features that Skeletor is known for, specifically the forearm ridges and the clawed feet, right? You would have to have something that looked like this to make it work. Now, you might be able to swap out the forearms, or really the arms in general, though I think even the shades of those don't match entirely with the regular Skeletor. And, you could swap out the boots, though those are going to be much brighter blue than everything else. So really there's no, like, perfect way to set this up. You're either going to have a Skeletor that's missing some of his key features, especially on the arms and feet, or you're going to have a Skeletor that doesn't color coordinate very well, so you're going to have to, unfortunately, pick your poison there. But overall, this still does look very cool, and I would accept this as a Skeletor stand-in if I didn't, already have one. I know we keep talking about Keldor / Skeletor over here, and poor Kronus is just being kind of ignored, but I'll be honest, he's not the most exciting figure out there. He's pretty generic. I will say, his face, they gave him such an ugly face sculpt. Look at that. Like, he's arguably uglier than Trapjaw, which is saying a lot because Trapjaw is, like, horribly deformed. Something I just noticed, he has little hooks in his back where he can actually store Trapjaw's accessories. I didn't even realize that. That's really cool. Makes me wonder if he was originally meant to come with those. Or maybe it's just a, planned bit of synergy, I'm not sure. So that's a really neat touch. That kind of makes Kronus just a bit more exciting in my book. Now, of course, we had to do a group shot with our characters' future selves. So Keldor, as we all know, becomes Skeletor, and then Kronus becomes the infamous villain Trapjaw. And I think they did a really good job designing these toys where they have the design cues where you know who they're supposed to be, but there's still a lot about them that's changed. Skeletor has obviously been mutated into a more demonic form with a skull-like face, his freaky, weird appendages and claws and all that. And Kronus has been more or less turned into a cyborg, having like this entire section of his body replaced, having mechanical implants all over, and then getting, the weird jaw that gives Trapjaw his name. Also, it made his face green for some reason. I never understood why the enhancements changed, Trapjaw's face from blue to green, but they did. Maybe it's like synthetic skin or something because his face got burned off, I don't know. But there's a nice bit of synergy between these characters and their future forms that I really appreciate. Now, I'm not sure exactly what continuity these guys are supposed to fall under. The whole idea of, Keldor being a pre-Skeletor and Kronus being a pre-Trapjaw, that came in the 2002 cartoon. Like, the name Keldor had been floated around in classic MOTU, but, never really established who he was. He was just a long-lost brother to King Randor. And then he got much more fleshed out in the reboot series, and then they also introduced the concept of Kronus as a pre-Trapjaw character. So, I don't know if these toys are supposed to be those versions, like those characters from that continuity, much like the 2002 Colors Evelyn and the upcoming, 2000X He-Man and Skeletor, or if they are supposed to be kind of a retcon to the vintage or Filmation continuities of He-Man, where it's like, oh, actually, Keldor and Kronus have, been a thing all along, we just never touched on them. I'm not sure. I guess it kind of leaves it open to your own personal headcanon. I like the idea of Skeletor being, He-Man's uncle and kind of keeping that a secret and just being mutated. Now, in the Classics toy line, they actually, furthered that explanation and said that he was combined with a demonic entity called Demo Man. I'd love to see an origin-style Demo Man just to complete this whole concept right here. So, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see if there's ever any clarification or if we just have to come up with something ourselves. But either way, whether these are the 2000X characters or just retcon vintage characters, I'm happy they exist because they're just a fun little prequel-style look at two of the famous villains of the franchise. Now, before we move on, I do want to take a look at these hooks on old Kronus' vest. So check that out. So we know Trapjaw, he has the modular arm, right, that can attach different weapons. And then he has two hoops on his belt to store the other two. That way he's got something to, somewhere to put everything. Well, Kronus doesn't have a robotic arm, so he'll just need to have three places to store things. And let's see how well it works. Oh, look at that. So far, so good. I like it. All right, and it color matches well, too. Look at that. So I'm not sure why he would have these attachments, because he doesn't have the arm to attach them to. And it's not like they can interact with his rifle or anything. So I guess it's just a nice little Easter egg, more so than anything actually functional. But it's still a nice touch. They didn't have to include it, but they did, so I'll give them props for that. And this completes our look at the new Rise of Evil 2-pack. Overall, I think this is a very fun little set. It's something that's a little niche, and it's not going to be for everyone, especially your more vintage purist collectors that only want the original He-Man lineup. But if you're someone that's interested in the expanded lore or interested in the reboot series where this whole concept came from, I think you'll very much enjoy this. They're two pretty solid figures. Admittedly, Keldor is a bit more interesting than Kronus because he just has so much more to him. He's got two different weapons. He's got the whole cape and all that for armor. Kronus, again, he has that cool little feature where he can store Trapjaw's weapons on his back, but again, doesn't serve much of a purpose other than storing them on his back because he can't do anything else with them. So, pretty solid overall. I absolutely love Keldor's weapons and how well those turned out with the whole translucent green glow to them. Really awesome. And, it was a good deal. Now, these are admittedly starting to dwindle on Target shelves, right? They're clearancing them out left and right. But if your local Target still has them, and especially has them on clearance, I would definitely pick them up. They're both really solid figures. Plus, you get the cool, alternate Skeletor head if you want, a darker, more sinister-looking Skeletor to play with. There's definitely something to be had here for most MOTU collectors. Of course, that is just my take on the set, so now I want to know what you think of it. Is this something you're interested in? Do you like the idea of having, expanded universe or expanded lore in your classic MOTU franchise? Or do you not like this? Either it's too obscure, you don't like the way it came out, or maybe you just missed out on the 2-pack and you're not interested in tracking it down. Any and all feedback's always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at MOTU Origins Rise of Evil 2-pack featuring Keldor and Kronus. With all that said, I will see you next time.